listening to The Marc Cox Show. Follow the show on Facebook, facebook.com/The Marc Cox Show.
Glad you're back with us. Just looking at some new poll numbers that are in here for the state of Missouri, and it still looks like Donald Trump is maintaining a double-digit lead in the state of Missouri. I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anyone. I'm hoping that kind of turnout means we're doing well down ticket as well. We're joined right now by United States Senator Roy Blunt, who's just gotten off stage in an event down in Rolla. Senator, how are you?
I'm good, Mark. It's great to be with you. Thanks for taking time today, and I'm excited about the way your show has developed over the last several months. I was on the other day with Tim Jones. He told me it was actually the Tim Jones show, but I said, no, you're just substituting for Marc Cox. I know the truth.
Senator,
people are getting excited. People are figuring out how much is at stake. They're figuring out that the Democrats nationally will say anything. It doesn't have to be true to get that 51st seat in the United States Senate and then have a 30-year lock on the Supreme Court, and Missourians are not going to let that happen.
Well, when have the stakes ever been higher?
I don't think they have. Politicians say every election this is the most important election ever, but I think you'd have to go back a long time to find a time when so much was at stake. The White House, control of the Congress, probably, Mark, a 30-year impact on the Supreme Court. I think it's very likely that the next president will appoint three and might nominate three and might nominate four judges. And the Senate needs to do its part of that job, which is you don't have to confirm judges that don't meet the standards of people who look at the Constitution and try to determine what the people that wrote it intended for it to say, rather than what they think it ought to say. We don't need judges who are ruling on what they think the Constitution should say. We need judges who will look at the Constitution and interpret the Constitution.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm thrilled to see that you're getting the level of support you are from the party. I mean, I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, Ted Cruz was here this week campaigning for you, right?
He was. We had two great events. We had about 1,000 people in Springfield and 600 or so in Joplin. Rand Paul is being helpful. Both Mike Pence and Donald Trump have stepped up in the last few days to talk about how important it is that I win this Senate seat, and I'm doing everything I can to be sure that happens.
Senator, let's talk for a moment about the presidential race. I'm looking at this coming down to maybe, New Hampshire, the 4 electoral votes in New Hampshire. This is shaping up to be another 2,000.
It really looks like it could be. Now, in this particular election year, 4 days is still a long time, but really looking at maps today, seeing what people are polling numbers in these various states, it appears it could come down to that. And the one thing we can do something about is what happens to our 11 electoral votes. And as you mentioned, it looks like that Trump has a comfortable lead in our state. And people ask me, well, what do you think about that? And I said, look, I don't know Donald Trump very well. I've spent some time with him since he was the nominee, but I know Mike Pence very well. He's one of my deputies when I was the whip in the House. I like that list of judges that he put on the Supreme Court, and those are the two best pieces of evidence that are on the table right now. And I think he'd also help us get the regulators under control. I think I should have to vote on every regulation that has any significant economic impact. And he's told me he'd sign that bill, and I'll do everything I can to get the bill on his desk.
Well, I'm hopeful that we're seeing a groundswell of support, and I just can't help but to think that rising tide is helping all the candidates.
Well, I think it is, too. And, we've got a real opportunity with 5 statewide offices to be filled in Jefferson City. And right now, only one of those offices is held by a Republican. When you look at where this race has come down to, we've got 8 statewide elected officials, counting Senator McCaskill and I. Only 2 of us are Republicans. Only 4 Republicans not named Blunt have been elected to a statewide office in 20 years. And what an opportunity it is to turn that around and have people that have a vision of the future, both going to Washington and in Jefferson City, who believe that the focus here should be better jobs and stronger families, not more government.
You know, the folks from the NRA reached out to us and offered us Chris Cox, who I know that you've gotten that NRA endorsement. And that gets us back to the Supreme Court for a minute. I don't know that there's a bigger issue than protection of the Second Amendment, Senator.
Well, and, I've got an A from the NRA. My opponent has an F. When he served 4 years in the General Assembly, fewer than 10% of the members of the General Assembly in Missouri were able to figure out how to get an F. And he did. And Chris Cox and Wayne LaPierre both came in and did a handful of events with me around the state earlier this year when they were proudly talking about their endorsement. And you're right. I mean, the Heller case, the Second Amendment case, was 5-4. 4 judges said, you don't have the right that you and I believe, and most Missourians believe, that the Second Amendment clearly and specifically gives us. 4 judges didn't think that. Fortunately, that day, 5 judges did, and one of those judges is no longer on the court. So what happens with that vacancy? What happens with the next likely vacancy? What happens with a third vacancy? I think you'd have to bet would happen in the next 3 years or 4 years, and I really believe we could see 4 vacancies filled in one term. So probably going back almost to the first president and the first Senate, the impact on the court of this election next Tuesday is likely to be second only to that.
Well, Senator Blunt, listen, we appreciate you giving us some time today. I wish you only the best, and I hope that we're getting people to the polls. And they're just, as you mentioned, the stakes have never been higher. They really haven't.
They haven't been, and I appreciate your encouragement. And people need to get out and vote. I think they're going to do that. Conservatives in big numbers, and look at what can happen to the country if we make the wrong choices. And so, keep doing what you're doing. Nobody on Wednesday on the conservative side of this discussion is going to be sorry that they worked too hard.
That's the truth. Senator Blunt, best of luck to you. Thank you.
Good to talk to you, Mark.
Yep, take care of yourself. Thank you. Missouri Senator Roy Blunt. Yeah, the Democrats have spent tens of millions of dollars on a couple of key Senate races in hopes that they can overturn the Republican control of the Senate. That would be an unmitigated disaster if Hillary Clinton wins Tuesday. If they're able to get the presidency and one of the 2 houses of Congress, it's over, folks. She'll get a rubber stamp. I mean, we can try, we can filibuster, but she'll get in her liberal left-wing Supreme Court judges that she's got loaded in the chute. For all we know, it's a Loretta Lynch or somebody else. I mean, it's just the tentacles are rotten. We've talked about it all show today between these Clintons and some of the people in high levels of government already. Wait till she's president. That's why this is so important. Get your friends and neighbors. Take them to the polls. If they're Clinton supporters, tell them the vote is on Wednesday. I'm just telling you, whatever you have to do, do it. Send